Tonight on CFTK-TV News, a big landslide has changed the Caribou region's geography. The RCMP is going to be watching the roads very closely this weekend, and some dogs have been rescued from a Prince George breeder.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin. Here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond for today. With the heat set to come back with a vengeance over the weekend and stick around for a while, the City of Terrace has since publicly released the specific conditions on when they would open up a cooling center. The daytime high would need to reach around 28 degrees or higher, and the nighttime low would need to be around 13 degrees over a span of 2 days or so, which would lead to Terrace getting a task number from the Emergency Management and Climate Readiness Ministry so they could ask for funds needed to open such a center. The Terrace and District Community Services Society and Kassan Society then would need enough people to spare to run the center, most likely at the garage on Killam and Kassan. But if a center is not opened up, Terrace's bylaw and community safety officers will end up handing out water and snacks to people. Campfire bans have been lifted in the Prince George and Northwest Fire Centers in time for the long weekend, but the BC Wildfire Service reminds people that is not the case for the rest of the province. The service says in a statement a drying trend is on the way for southern BC, making forest fuels more susceptible to ignition. It says it is also expecting an increase in thunderstorms and lightning strikes throughout the southern BC region. Environment Canada has issued heat warnings for more than a dozen regions in the south through this long weekend, including the Okanagan, the Kootenays, the Thompson, and much of eastern Vancouver Island. Now to a massive landslide that is dramatically changing the geography of the Caribou. The slide sent tons of debris into the Chilcotin River, and suddenly a new dam was formed. The latest concern if the dam gives way and a torrent of water is unleashed. CTV's Rob Buffum has more.
It's a large and growing lake full of debris created by a massive landslide blocking the Chilcotin River. Essentially a dam 30 meters high, more than 600 meters wide. The landslide was first discovered by the Ilnickis, whose ranch is 1 kilometer away.
Hopefully it lets go during the day when people can watch and prepare and see what's going on, so then you know what's coming at you.
The water pressure behind the landslide is building. Experts say it's just a matter of time before it overwhelms the dam, either over or through it. Likely sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours, bringing with it the force of all that pent-up water and debris.
The risk to people and communities along the river is unknown at this time, but it has the potential to be significant.
The landslide happened late Tuesday in the Farwell Canyon, 90 kilometers from Williams Lake. It's triggered evacuation orders of 12 nearby homes. There are flood watches and warnings in a wide swath down the Chilcotin River and the connecting Fraser River, all the way to Hope.
All people and boaters along and on the Chilcotin and the Fraser River from Hope to the Chilcotin are asked to leave the area immediately.
So far, no homes have been damaged, but those living nearby are on edge, especially those in this ranch, the closest home to the slide.
This breaks and goes quickly. It's going to be, pretty much catastrophic, I would think, for their place.
A man camping by the river at the slide site narrowly escaped with his life. His dog remains missing, but he only suffered a broken leg. The camper spotted by Ilnicki's husband.
They could then hear a noise and realized it was someone calling for help from across the river. He's extremely lucky.
Human life and property aren't the only concerns here.
Chilcotin is a critical spawning habitat for salmon and other fish. And very critically, the sockeye moving up the system right now.
Geotechnical assessments on if and how a slow release of water might be possible are ongoing, while still planning for the dam to be overwhelmed, making for tense hours ahead for communities both close by and even hundreds of kilometers downstream. Robert Buffum, CTV News.
Coming up next, a murderer getting parole granted has made some people very angry. Welcome back. Vancouver City Council voted to suspend the work of its integrity commissioner while it launches a third-party review. It's a decision that has some politicians wondering if the ruling party is trying to hide something. As CTV's Isabella Zavarisi reports, the city's former mayor is weighing in on the issue.
I hope nothing is being swept under the rug here.
In the final hours of Vancouver City Council, at the last meeting before summer break, a contentious motion passed to review the role of the city's integrity commissioner.
If something's broken, it needs to be fixed, and that's what we're doing.
The motion stems from a recommendation in the integrity commissioner's annual report. Lisa Southern said her role in providing oversight is, quote, not always clear.
When the integrity commissioner themselves comes forward and says they're not clear about what their role is, what their scope is, that's a problem.
I think it's been taken out of context by the council and used as an excuse to really ramp down the accountability at council, which should be alarming to people.
Former Mayor Kennedy Stewart introduced the position during his tenure.
It really gives confidence to the public that these institutions have integrity. And removing it would not be good.
On top of asking for a third-party review, Council has paused all of the Commissioner's current investigations.
And that's really the problem here, is that they won't go public with the Integrity Commissioner suspended. So the public will never know the content of those complaints.
I'm not being secret about anything. I've been pretty clear. This is a recommendation that's been brought forward.
CTV News asked the Mayor and Council if they were aware of any open investigations involving them. Councillors said no. Mayor Ken Sim's office told us Southern has reviewed dozens of complaints against him, the majority stemming from one person, which is still ongoing. In a rare move, the mayor has called a special council meeting for Tuesday to amend the Code of Conduct bylaw.
This is just incompetence.
While the public can still send in complaints, council and staff don't yet know when the Integrity Commissioner will be able to resume her work. Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News, Vancouver.
He was 17 when he committed two of the most notorious murders in recent BC history. Derek Lord has been granted full parole, sparking outrages from the victims' family members. CTV's Michelle Bernora reports on the hearing's tense moments.
The decision to grant Derek Lord full parole came during a sometimes tense parole board hearing in which Lord became quickly agitated by questions from parole board members. Derek Lord was a teenager when he took part in the brutal killings of Sharon Huneman and Doris Leatherbarrow in their Tsawwassen home as part of a murder-for-hire plot for a high school buddy to gain a $4 million inheritance.
It was such a brutal, heinous crime. I don't care that he was, 17 years old.
Lord, who has never admitted his involvement in the crime, was asked by the board how it made him feel to hear from the victims' families during Thursday's hearing. It makes me feel agitated. I'm not happy about it. I'm listening to people badmouth me, he said, later adding, if I could just ask for a recess, obviously I'm agitated right now and need to take a break.
He was agitated, arrogant, dismissive. We could maybe get past this if there were any expression of remorse, any apology at all.
Lord has been on day parole 4 years without incident. He works in the lumber industry in northern BC and has a wife and son. After serving a sentence that began more than 3 decades ago, ultimately the board ruled that he did not present an undue risk and granted him full parole.
We are all worried about our safety. We're worried for the public. The parole board failed at their jobs today, and it was clear to us they failed.
Lord's parole comes with several conditions, including that he not have contact with the victim's family and that he attend counseling for 1 year. Michelle Bernoro, CTV News.
The RCMP will be out in full force on our highways this weekend, cracking down on unsafe drivers. There's been plenty of road fatalities recently, and they're urging drivers to pay attention to the road and stay sober behind the wheel. Penny Dathloss reports.
In the past month, 1 or 2 people have died every day on BC highways.
We are looking at an abnormally high number of people on our highways right now.
The overall number of road deaths is lower than last year, but there have still been dozens of deaths this summer. A young family in Agassiz, 2 people in Boston Bar. Last month in Langley, a driver was thrown from their car in a one-vehicle incident. They did not survive.
I have a lot of empathy for this family.
For the August-long weekend, RCMP are bringing in extra Mounties to ramp up patrols and enforcement on our highways.
We do have our teams in full force. We also have overtime members. We'll also have specialized driving units.
ICBC stats show impaired driving soars 25% each summer.
It's really concerning. It's frustrating.
And while many of this year's deaths are still under investigation,
what we do know is that there's vehicles not staying in their own lane for a variety of reasons,
including distractions from devices or passengers, falling asleep or missing a turn because they're going far too fast.
When you see a bad driver, or somebody driving dangerously, somebody passing on a double solid, somebody going too fast for curves and not maintaining their lane properly, someone who's swerving in their own lane and maybe falling asleep, or maybe they're impaired, please report them to the police so that we can come deal with that.
Because the dozens of deaths don't include the many more facing life-changing injuries, the vast majority of which were preventable with a little care and slowing down. Penny Daflos, CTV News, Surrey.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast is likely to be partly cloudy with a low at 11 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will see a few clouds of their own, but with a low at 13 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should have clear skies instead, as well as a low at 5 degrees. On the north coast, the upcoming week will see almost entirely sunny conditions with the possibly odd bit of cloud and a high moving from 18 to 21 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them should see all sun and pretty much nothing else, while the high bounces from 28 to 32 degrees. In the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, their next week or so is also expected to contain nothing but sun, with the high shifting between 26 and 31 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is a special travel advisory, a special event planned, utility work, bridge maintenance, construction work, shoulder maintenance, and roadside brushing. Highway 35 has paving operations, and 118 has some bridge construction. Highway 37 has some bridge maintenance. Highway 37A has maintenance too, and there is some crack sealing on the Nishka Highway. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the View of the Province's highway cams. Still to come is an update on the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Welcome back. Israel announced that they killed Hamas military leader Mohammed Deif, a man believed to be behind the October 7th attacks in Israel. Israel also took responsibility for killing a Hezbollah leader. As CTV's Heather Wright reports, Israel is now bracing for retaliation.
Thousands packed the streets of Tehran today as a funeral for Ismail Haniyeh was held. The Hamas political leader was killed, reportedly by a bomb planted in the guest house where he was staying in Iran's capital. While Israel has not said whether it was behind the assassination of Haniyeh, it has taken responsibility for the strike that killed a top Hezbollah commander on Tuesday. At Fuad Shukur's funeral today, the militant group's leader promised what he called a true response, saying a red line had been crossed. There are no longer fronts, Syed Hassan Nasrallah said. This is an open battle, and it has entered a new phase. Israel has made clear its goal since the October 7th massacre is to destroy Hamas and take out senior figures, among them Mohammed Deif, one of the architects of that attack. Today, Israel confirmed he was killed in an airstrike last month in Gaza. He was Israel's #1 wanted man for years, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, adding his elimination establishes a simple principle. Whoever hurts us, we hurt him. The events of the last 3 days have not only raised concerns of this conflict spreading, but also on the state of ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. Today, Egypt said it will reach out to both sides in an effort to restart those talks, while the U.S. Secretary of State urged restraint.
It's urgent that all parties make the right choices in the days ahead.
Dozens of German Shepherds living in horrible conditions were seized from a breeder near Prince George. CTV's Mark McMahon has more, and a warning: this story's details may be disturbing to some.
Who's the toy?
It's some much-needed playtime for these pups. Among 43 German Shepherds the BC SPCA seized from a breeder southeast of Prince George this week.
Our constables were confronted with an absolute horrific situation that, quite frankly, we had no idea that there were going to be this many animals on the property.
The SPCA took possession of 31 adults and 12 puppies. It says the breeders were housing the dogs in dire conditions.
They were living primarily in outdoor kennels, plywood, chain link, soaked in urine, feces.
These puppies were found along with their mother in a dark basement, in a plastic pool with paper towels for bedding.
Our hope and desire is that eventually, these animals will be able to be adopted.
And while German Shepherds are often admired for their intelligence and athleticism, perhaps best known for their use in policing, these dogs were a shadow of that when the SPCA rescued them.
Really disturbing. Once the constables were able to start removing the animals, they realized just how skinny they were, ranging from, on the brink of emaciation to underweight.
Some dogs also had damaged teeth, stomach problems, or visible wounds. The SPCA has the ability to recommend charges and hopes if the person is charged and convicted, the courts impose a breeding ban.
With or without charges, with or without a conviction, hoping this is a wake-up call, that that's the end, no more. It's really tragic to see animals like this.
As the investigation is still underway, potential adoptions are still weeks or months away. But the SPCA welcomes donations given the costs of feeding and rehabilitating the dogs. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now for a story where a Lamborghini-related investment escalated to the point where a civil suit was launched and a hit might have even been put out on a man. CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports.
Nice day for a burnout.
This is Colin Murphy posing for a photo with his 2017 Lamborghini Huracan. Investors believe that Murphy was an associate of Canada's self-proclaimed crypto king, Aidan Platursky.
I started cashing it out and I started spoiling myself.
Like Platursky, Murphy promised massive returns on investment.
He had some toys and some money. There was a belief on my part that he was legit, for sure.
Craig Sutherland says he invested $270,000 with Murphy. Just 5 months after the initial investment, Murphy sent him a message claiming his returns had more than doubled. Though Sutherland soon learned it was too good to be true. Unable to access his earnings, he launched a civil suit and began speaking out. Sutherland has since received word that an individual has been trying to hire someone to kill him.
I learned that there's been an offer out there to take care of me, get rid of me.
Sutherland hired lawyer Norman Groot to lead his civil case and track down Murphy's assets.
Mr. Murphy initially advised that he sold the Lamborghini for $20,000.
Though just recently a second alleged victim of Murphy's, who asked we conceal her identity, found Murphy's Lamborghini online for sale at this dealership in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
I had Googled the VIN number and 3 2017 Lamborghini Huracan links showed up. I said to myself, I'm like, we got him.
According to an American buyer, Murphy sold the Lamborghini in Las Vegas, not for $20,000, but for $120,000 cash. The buyer's lawyer even sent this photo of the cash exchange. Murphy has previously refused to hand over vital information.
Are there any weapons in the house?
In 2023, cameras were rolling when lawyer Norman Groot and a private investigator arrived at a home where Murphy was staying to seize his digital devices. A phone was found hiding in the bathroom. Murphy grabbed it and refused to hand it over. When he finally did the next day, it had been erased. Victims claim Murphy is hiding a digital cryptocurrency wallet.
He showed me his floating balance that he had on his phone. It was like $1.3 million in his phone.
In crypto.
In crypto.
Murphy was convicted of contempt for wiping his phone. As for the cash from his recent car sale, that too remains a mystery.
The big question is, where is the money?
It could be in a shoebox under his bed.
Murphy is being summoned by the courts to appear and disclose where the missing money from the Lamborghini sale is located. A date has yet to be set. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 6/100ths of a cent, the price of gold is down $11, oil is down $2.79, natural gas is the same, aluminum is up $5.50, in Toronto the TSX is down 495.58 points, the Venture Index is down 17.08, in New York the Dow Jones is down 610.71, and NASDAQ is down 417.99. Still ahead is a tale of a man finally being freed from his prison space in Russia. Welcome back. A Canadian-born man is free after being held by Russia for 6 years. Paul Whelan was released as part of a major prisoner exchange. As CTV's Mike Lecoteur reports, it's the biggest swap between Russia and the West in decades.
It's being called a feat of diplomacy. Multiple countries were involved in a 24-person prisoner swap, the largest involving these countries since the end of the Cold War. A photo showing the first moments of freedom. Journalist Evan Gershkovich, Canadian-U.S. citizen Paul Whelan, and Russian-American journalist Alsu Kurmasheva smile widely as they head home.
Well, good afternoon. And this is a very good afternoon.
Surrounded by family members of the hostages, U.S. President Joe Biden praised allies who helped make it happen.
Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey, they all stepped up and they stood with us. They stood with us. And they made bold and brave decisions.
Russian video from the tarmac does not show British citizen Vladimir Kara-Murza, but he was another key figure in the swap. As part of the deal, Russia is getting back a number of prisoners from multiple countries. Some experts on Russian affairs warn there's a reason President Vladimir Putin wanted them back.
These hackers, for example, could go back to, say, moonlighting for the Russian FSB or GRU security services.
U.S. officials confirm Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny could have been part of a prisoner swap before he died mysteriously in a Russian penal colony in February.
Putin didn't want to do any favors for Biden when he was running against Trump. And so Biden dropping out of the whole story then gave Putin the impetus to finally go through with it.
In a statement, Whelan's family gave special thanks to Canadian officials who also pressed for his release, adding they hope Paul will be given the space and privacy he needs as he rebuilds his life after being held hostage for more than 5.5 years. Mike Lecoteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
Fisheries and Oceans Canada says a yellow life jacket played a big role in saving a sailboat captain who spent hours in the water off Cortes Island. The department says the man was hypothermic when a Coast Guard crew pulled him from the water. It says the rescue operation began with a report of an unoccupied sailboat on the shore of Cortes Island north of Lund on the Sunshine Coast. Several Coast Guard vessels and aircraft were deployed to search the area, and the Fisheries Department says it's unlikely crews would have spotted him if it wasn't for him wearing a brightly colored life jacket. That's all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thank you for watching.